listen. Now this is podcasting.
Hello, everyone. We're back. It's that time of the week again to hear two of the wisest, noblest,
handsomest, I think.
handsomest, best, tall, dark, handsome.
Dark flowing hair.
Yeah, neither of us are dark. We're actually both extremely
quite pasty
looking. Yeah.
Very Northern European.
Very northern.
I'm very Irish looking.
You are very Irish. I would say
Like Irish Viking.
You've got a stronger face, like a more square face. I'd say you're a little.
I'm
you're
more
a bit
German.
Scott. Got a bit more of a Scott look to you.
I have a little bit of Scotch Irish, I've been told,
Okay.
and I'm probably at least a third German.
Okay, nice. I'm all Scandinavia by way of Scotland and England.
Yeah.
Yeah,
We got some common ancestors somewhere.
somewhere
At
the
least in
bloodline
Noah.
probably meet. Yeah. Okay, guys. Got a doozy for you today. This one.
A hot one.
A hot one. This one might get a little autistic, so this one may run a little long.
Ethan and I might end up slapping each other a little bit over this one.
Yeah.
I have a feeling I'm going to lose this, though. Or let's
Let's
come
do-
around more to
No.
Ethan's way of thinking.
Maybe. Who knows?
see.
Who knows? We don't know. We don't know how this is going to go. Let's do a Rex first. Let's do between the couch.
Do you have an
cushions
intro,
first.
or you want to do the?
Well, we'll do
Between
the. I'll do
Couch
the
Cushions first?
intro because the intro is going to bleed so well into the topic.
All right. I see
You
what
see what I'm
you're doing
saying?
there. I see
Yeah.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yep. So my rec is a video game.
By the way, this is
time.
between the couch cushions.
Between the couch cushions, yes. Old stuff you guys may not know about. Rogue Squadron or Rogue Leader. I'm going to lump them together. Rogue Leader's the sequel.
Okay.
They're Star Wars games. Star Wars Rogue, whatever. I said the title. I don't need to say it again. You know what I'm talking about. Look it up. It's a great game. I think it was originally an arcade game, and then it came out for the N64, and then they put it on the GameCube. And I played it across the N64 and the GameCube. Amazing game, dude. One of the best games to play as a little kid, and it's really fun. Like, it's one of those things, if you work from home or whatever, and you're just like in between meetings, you need to kill a few minutes, you just fire this thing up and just play it. So good. Just play for a few minutes, turn it off, whatever. Every level is replayable and fun, and it's just really good. Especially if it's a good one, I think, to play with your son. My dad used to play it with me all the time. That's like a thing that I remember very fondly. So that is my rec, the Rogue series, the Star Wars Rogue series, Rogue Squadron and Rogue Leader. There you go. Let me put that on, y'all. Jason, what do you got?
Pause it for a second.
Pausing it for a second. And we're back. All right, Jason.
All right. Had a last minute inspiration there.
Yeah.
I'm going to recommend two.
Okay.
Because we're doing Star Wars today. Star Wars video games from the 90s and early 2000s. So first pick is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which was a fantastic RPG, kind of ahead of its time. You would play as a Jedi capable, a force user, and you would assemble a team. And you would perform certain actions that lent you more to evil or good. Would it affect your lightsaber color?
No, you could change it.
You could change it?
Yeah,
Okay.
You could just change it with the crystal.
Anyway, but excellent characters. There was that. I especially remember that droid, the assassination droid.
Meat bag.
It was
Yeah.
Yes, meat bag. I mean, master.
Yeah.
Great dialogue. You'd assemble your team though, and you'd go about accomplishing things. I don't remember much. You've played it more recently.
You're trying
actually.
to. I've played it a ton.
So I remember it was great, but I haven't played it in years. So go ahead, Ethan. You tell
just,
a little more about
in the
it.
first one, you're trying to find the star base, which is like I don't remember what exactly it's called, but it's the thing that Malik and Revan, the Sith Lords of that time, they like found it and turned it on, and it like started creating this massive fleet for them, and they're using that fleet to attack the Republic.
Malik.
Yeah. And so you gotta go destroy it basically. It's like so
Okay.
you're like flying around all these different planets, retracing their steps to find the map,
Okay.
like the pieces of the map that lead to it.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the first one.
Yeah.
The second one's also very good.
I never played that one, but
Oh, dude, they're so good. All those. I mean, those games are considered in the gaming world. They're considered like two of the best games ever made.
yeah.
So they're so good. They're so good. Yeah.
And bonus, and you guys get a third one this week,
Yes.
is Star Wars Republic Commando,
Yes.
which was a sort of a first-person strategy shooter where you were the lead in this four-person squadron of clone commandos. And so they all had like different colored armor and different specialties. There's like the heavy gunner guy and the medic, and you were the lead. And there was like a fourth guy, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But they all had slightly different personalities, even for clones.
Yeah.
But you would like blow doors and stuff like that. They would get in position, you'd command them, and you'd blow the door, toss a grenade in, that sort of thing. So they did a really good job of making it feel like you had smart enough AI on your team's part. They actually like worked together in a way along with you. It wasn't like the Marines in Halo, which were useless.
Right.
Like they actually were smart and took cover and stuff like that. So they behaved like special ops
Yeah.
commandos, and it was a phenomenal game.
Yeah. Really good. Another great
And it
one.
had, if you look it up, if you don't know what it looks like, look up the cover for it, because it is probably the coolest cover of any video game.
It's very sick. Very sick. Oh man, that's bothering me. My just so you guys are aware of what's going on right now, I have a very expensive gaming computer in my office, and the fans are clipping against something, and it's making me nervous. So I'm sorry if I get distracted for this. Yes. So
You had something that was going to lead into our main topic.
yeah, I did. So I came across this. So there's this guy Aaron McIntyre, who's a big political pundit. On this stupid fan. It's getting worse. Aaron McIntyre is he's a political pundit on the right. He's talked to the Moscow guys before at some point.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, and they talk and like they'll reference him a lot, whatever. So he, maybe it's just because I interact with his stuff on Twitter, and Twitter is such a hyperbolic place, and it's hard to get a good sense of what people really think. I don't know. I'm just not a fan of a lot of his stuff. And the other day he tweeted something that was crazy retarded, which is that free markets have never existed and will never exist.
Okay.
Which I understand his line of thinking, and I don't really care to tease it out here. But because it would take too long, but his argument basically is that because there are restrictions on markets, and there's never been a time when there weren't laws that restricted what you can do in a market, that means that free markets didn't exist. Which is, so here's the reason I want to bring that up, because this is very important. Okay, the free market is not a human invention. All right, it does not mean, having the free market does not mean that you can buy and sell and trade freely. That's not what that means. The free market is a description. It is a describing term to describe a base layer function of nature that will occur whether human beings are alive around to be involved with it or not. This is a big part of the reason. This is a big thing for me, that I really want people to start to change the way they think about technological progress, about market forces. These are not things that human beings have control over. They are forces of nature. Okay? It's not up to humans whether or not nukes get invented. It's not up to humans. The price of wheat is not up to humans. Okay? Because birds put a price on wheat. Birds put a price on wheat. Monkeys put a price on fruit. Okay?
I gotcha.
Rocks put a price on the pressure it takes to create them. The price it's you have to divorce that word
From
whatever,
dollars.
from dollars and like the human meaning that you think exists. The free market exists as a base layer factor of reality, and then societies choose through social contracts to what extent they are going to engage in a free in the free market that already exists.
Okay.
And so saying that free markets have never existed is retard stuff. It is what I tweeted was, it's saying that free markets don't exist is the same thing as saying that temperature doesn't exist because we can manipulate it with AC and heaters. It's the same thing. So gut brain take, and I want to use that take to leverage that my critique of that take to drive home this idea that markets, economic movement, all this stuff, it is a factor of nature. Human beings can control it maybe a little bit more than they can the weather. Well, no, we can control the weather somewhat. And so you can somewhat control markets. You can, for a short time, you can put price controls on things or whatever, but there will be correction. Things will collapse or not explode. People will adjust. It's not up to you. The free market exists. The Lord built the free market into the base layer of reality. So sorry for the like anti-libertarian people who like totally want to throw the whole Austrian economics school out the window because you think that it's responsible for trannies or whatever. But it's just, look, there are a lot of things that libertarians don't understand and like they don't get, like they're the opposite side of this problem. But you can't say that like Mises was wrong because women are allowed to vote or whatever, like whatever your angle you're taking on this is. Free markets exist, and it's not a coincidence that countries that have the balls to open up their economies as much as, not necessarily as much as possible, but to a greater extent than others, always thrive and excel. That's not a
just because they're operating within nature's bounds.
Right. Yeah, and
similar to how if you operate within any of God's pre-made structures like a biblical marriage, you will thrive.
Right, exactly. And so to throw you guys a bone who disagree with me, yes, you cannot have people doing drugs and prostituting themselves freely in the street. Obviously, you can't totally just turn everything over to anarchy. You have to have some structure built on top of the free market in order to manage the incredible, chaotic, destructive, creative power of the free market. But the more you have to strike a balance. You can't just you can't instill fascism, and you also can't instill total libertarian utopianism. It's just not, neither of those things will work. And you say, but fascism is whatever. Hitler didn't mean what. Hitler lost. He lost. The Germans lost. Fascism lost.
Badly.
Like it didn't even stand a chance. So shove it. I kick rocks. What do you want? Anyways, that goes into our topic a little bit, I guess, which is complex societies versus
simple societies, more
societies.
Traditional or historically simple societies.
Yes. And I think specifically the topic you and I were discussing before we started recording was
Maybe we'll back up and do a little bit of background why we're talking about this.
Yeah,
right?
go for it.
I think we've teased at this maybe in others where Ethan and I have crossed swords briefly. Oh no, I know what this came out of. I wrote down this topic when I was listening to one of your Maximum Alert episodes.
Okay.
And you were ridiculing simple societies, where you were talking about how stable complex societies are.
Yeah.
And so I balked at that. And
yeah.
Because obviously I am more in favor of, I'm maybe I'm just waxing romantic about simpler times and everybody being a jack of all trades, and you being, it's what I like to do. I like to be able to do as much of my own stuff as possible.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, I've come to realize I'm a bit deluded in that I can't do all of these things. Like even my own house, which is made out of, I'm building an underground house out of shipping containers. I couldn't have dug the hole without years of manual labor.
Yeah.
I used modern machinery, very high tech, very powerful machinery to do it. So which wouldn't have been possible without the Industrial Revolution and things that I otherwise very much don't like.
Yeah.
Many of the things that came out of the Industrial Revolution were very bad for the home economy, were very bad for the family integrity. And so that's where I'm coming from, is I'm trying to get back to a family being able to work together.
Yeah.
And in a highly specialized society that is more difficult, right? Because we can't compete on price with highly specialized companies, with huge conglomerates that can produce a chicken and sell it for, $5 at the supermarket.
Yeah.
Like I can't sell one for 20 that's been home raised unless somebody really, really knows the benefits of that.
Yeah.
So that's part of what I'm fighting against or kicking against. And some of this just comes down to quality. And if you realize that one of these chickens is of quality and health and the other one is not, then really we're not selling even the same product. And that's how I would need to distance myself in order to succeed in that market.
Right.
So I guess coming into this, what I heard in that episode was that high levels of specialization are good and a sign of a complex society that is more stable. I don't know if I'm right.
Okay. Yeah.
Perhaps, Ethan, you can talk about what... So I guess I read another book. I'm blanking on the name of the book right now, but he was talking about how historically all societies have had... You can picture the society being structured like a pyramid. The lower layer of the pyramid, kind of like the old food pyramid, the base was made up of all like workers, blue collar, lots of laborers, lots of farmers. Almost everybody grew food of their own to a larger degree and were more subsistent.
Yeah.
As opposed to highly specialized where you will train and you have a higher level of education, perhaps years of schooling to be able to make a higher wage and then trade that money, the fiat currency that you earn from that career, and trade it for the other necessities like food and shelter. You have no idea how to fix anything in your house. You don't know how the house is built. You don't know how to fix the plumbing, the electrical, the HVAC. You don't know how your own computer works. You don't know how to garden or grow anything. You have almost no skill aside from the one thing you've trained in.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing I'm kicking against is, in my mind, at least as of the last few years, I see that as unstable because if your career gets done away with, because the point this book was making is that there are so many careers as compared to what there used to be historically that they get phased out. Technology overtakes them, whether it's machines or AI or whatever it is, it gets automated away. And those people are left, then their specialty is wiped out and they have to kind of start over.
Yeah.
In some way.
Yeah.
And so I don't know to what degree that actually happens and how much you can transition to another related field, or be retrained. That's kind of the ongoing. I think that's a debate at large.
Yeah.
On the internet and in society today, because we are at a point in history that is, as far as we know, never been reached before. It's possible. Yeah. It's possible pre-flood that there was huge levels of technology that were just wiped out and there's nothing left of them, so we don't know what they had.
Right.
They may have had computer-like things and whatnot. Like Noah may have been building the ark with with all sorts of specialized power tools. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe not just saws and hammers. It was a humongous undertaking.
Right.
And the engineering that went on with like the pyramids and everything, like who knows what they were actually able to do.
Yeah.
And maybe just none of it was
Well, they actually figured
left.
out, there's somebody who has figured out how they did the pyramids.
Did they? Okay.
Yeah. They knew how to liquefy stone and then re-solidify it.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember
Wow,
exactly
they, like,
how it is,
cast
but the
stone?
guy, it's a guy who's works at some institution or whatever. He does it all the time now. He just like shows them how it just like, you could like turn, and that's why it's like these are stones that are like cut.
But they're not cut.
They're not cut.
They're cast.
They're cast.
Wow, really?
Yeah, so they would melt.
Okay, I didn't know that.
They
That's
would
fantastic.
melt the stone with this chemical that you can synthesize easily, like in a bucket, just like at your house. And you can put it on the stone. The stone will liquefy.
Mm-hmm.
You just collect it, and then you can just put it on whatever.
And it'll re-solidify after a time, or add in a
I
different
don't
chemical?
remember how exactly it is.
Okay,
that
but
you
somehow you re-solidify it in the form you want.
Right. And so that's how like all these, and he like demonstrated how like this is possible across the entire planet. That's how all these stone, and then like they're like the Peruvian or whatever,
So like all those temples in the jungle.
where you can't even, the keystones, you can't even slip a piece of paper through. They're so perfectly
So
matched.
it was not through some masterful chiseling.
Right. Exactly.
Oh,
It was
okay.
cast. Yeah.
It's almost, those are now less impressive to me.
yeah.
That's kind of sad.
Yeah.
Here I thought it was like somebody who knew stone inside and out that they were able to like.
Well, I mean, think about how much time it took to figure that out. You know, those people knew stone inside and out.
But it's like a CNC machine that can carve stuff perfectly. With a
Right.
computer system, it's like that's not somebody who was there carefully carving stuff out by hand.
Yeah.
It was done by a machine to who knows how many decibels of a millimeter precision, you know?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's impressive that they were able to do it, but it it takes away the craftsman masterfulness of knowing how to carve a stone like that. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
So I think one of the things we can start out here with is to go back to this idea that technological advancement is not up to people. Nobody gets to decide what technologies get invented and what doesn't. It is technology is going to progress. It is a state of nature. It is a fact. That being said, why am I saying that? Because there is a lot of kickback against this idea of like, well, the industrial revolution displaced all these people and whatever. That there is no way to avoid that. That is lamenting the death toll of hurricanes. It's not inappropriate to call that a tragedy, right?
Okay, right. Because it did displace
It did displace families. It did do destruction, but to burn, to say we're just not even going to build because it could be knocked over by a earthquake is not an option.
Yeah.
So that's one thing to keep in mind here. Now, the next thing to keep in mind is that there's a lot of talk online about the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
There's a lot of talk in general about the Industrial Revolution. You know, you got Ted Kaczynski's The Industrial Revolution, its consequences for the human race or whatever. And this does not necessarily negate what anybody says about the Industrial Revolution, but it does reveal how little those people are thinking past what they're interacting with for me to tell you this. And that is that the Industrial Revolution is a consequence of the Agricultural Revolution. It is not. The Agricultural Revolution is what kicked this whole thing off. So,
and the Agricultural Revolution was?
The Agricultural Revolution, I believe, was in the... it was a little bit before the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. That's when it started.
Are you talking about starting to use farm implements as opposed to?
No. So there was in Europe, they figured out, so throughout all of human history, all the farming cultures that existed, they could only use about a third of the land they had for farming at any given time because the fields had to remain fallow in order to get nitrogen back in the soil.
I gotcha. Okay.
So
right, naturally allowing the land rest.
Right.
Just like, well, I mean, biblically, and it was law, Israelite law that God put in place, saying every 7 years you're land must lie fallow.
Okay. So yes. So,
in order to let it rest.
right.
Just like we need rest once a week, the land was supposed to have rest. I think.
Something
I
like
know.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I might not get the particulars exactly right. I believe it was every 7 years.
Yeah. People can look it up. The particulars don't. Yeah. The spirit of what you're saying, I understand.
I just don't want to put it out there as
Yeah.
that I'm saying verbatim.
Yeah. Yeah.
And somebody goes, "This fool,
Yeah.
he doesn't know Levitical law."
So the agricultural revolution was one discovery. It was one discovery. It happened in Europe. And it's that if you plant legumes, beans, and like alfalfa grass,
Nitrogen fixers.
in the soil, it will replace all the nitrogen in the soil. So now, instead of leaving something fallow every year, you can just plant legumes in it and alternate it that way. Now you're getting food that people can eat, but you're also getting food animals can eat. So you're increasing the total food supply for your stock animals as well, because people aren't going to eat alfalfa, but pigs will.
Right.
Rabbits will, cows will.
You convert it into meat that way.
Right, you convert it into meat that way.
Or use it for work animals to feed them.
Exactly. But now you've got more animals in general, so there's more manure in the system as well to use as fertilizer.
Right.
So you created this exponential feedback system where food very, very rapidly over like 20 or 30 years, all of a sudden food production gets extremely efficient, because it's not just times 3 because you're getting to deploy all 3 acres of your 3 acres at one time. It's the exponential return of having more animals, more food from the animals, more fertilizer for the animals to make those fields more efficient.
Right.
So it's this feedback loop that goes really quickly.
As N.D. Wilson would like to say, you're harvesting star power.
Yeah, sure.
Which means he's calling the sun a star.
Yeah.
He's referencing the magicalness of the world we actually live in and how we miss it because it's so everyday.
Yeah.
But if you think about it, the grass absorbs star power. It absorbs sunlight and synthesizes that into something physical and grows.
Yeah.
It can't grow without sunlight. So it's taking something, vitamins that it absorbs, like little solar panels, biological God-made solar panels, and increasing, combined with moisture and the vitamins and everything, or the minerals in the soil, and growing, feeding cows, sheeps, growing to sheeps.
Yes.
So growing your sheeps and your goatses and making food for you, and they're pooping and they're building topsoil. They're making your land more. Joel Salatin talks about how when they bought their land, I don't know, he said they had gullies of topsoil that had been lost to erosion, washed away.
Yeah.
Just what would have been like hundreds of years worth of natural buildup.
Yeah.
But through just bringing on as much organic material as they possibly could.
Yeah.
Scrap stuff like peanut hulls, things that factories would throw out at the time, straw and whatever, and feeding their animals, stuff that they brought on, even like buying chicken feed. It's like he sees that as you're not just feeding your chickens, you're buying like future soil basically and fertilizer.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So the agricultural revolution before the agricultural revolution, it took 20 people to make 21 people's food for 21 people. It took 21 workers to make food for 21 people. After the agricultural revolution, it was something like 3 to like 90.
Okay.
Something retarded like that. It's not that, but it's something that drastic. Now the question is, what happens to all those farmers? What happens to all those farmers?
They do something else.
All of that labor was freed up. Mm-hmm. All that human time was freed up. That is how the Industrial Revolution started.
Because
it was all
they
this
went
time.
to focusing their time and energies elsewhere.
Yeah, and now you had a huge labor force that could work in the factories and all this stuff. So there's one thing that's a really common misconception, which is that if AI comes in and it replaces all these jobs and destroys all these jobs, what are we going to do? But you're thinking about it wrong. You're thinking about it in reverse. The way you actually should be thinking about it is that AI is freeing up all this labor to go do other things.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's doing.
My boss's brother, who's in tech, he talks about how he writes software using ChatGPT.
Yeah.
He feeds it information, tells it what he wants, and revises it, and he's able to write computer programs. Even though I'm sure he knows how to do some programming, but he is not a programmer.
Yeah.
But he's able to get these computer programs. So you're freeing up programmer time with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry, programmers.
Yeah.
To some degree.
Well, so here's
but
another
also
thing.
What you're saying is that now those programmers can put their time and energy elsewhere
in other stuff. And human interest, this goes back to what we talked about a few episodes ago with what you want. Human interest aligns with human need. So on a large scale, people will just they will adjust. They will adjust. People will adjust. And what they go do after that will be whatever they need to do. That's what it will be. Now, one of the things that's also very important to note is that like the Industrial Revolution, the AI revolution or the digital revolution has driven the cost of things down. So
because there's so much less man hours tied up in it.
Right. There's so much less required that the cost of things are being depressed. And when AI comes into power, when it actually becomes the thing that people are talking about it being, which I don't know if that'll happen anytime soon, but when it does, it will drive the cost of stuff down so low. The cost of just like everyday goods, pencils, milk, that kind of stuff. It'll drive the cost of that stuff down so low that it'll be almost free. And so it is very possible that what the future looks like is what we have now, which is that you have a drastically increased amount of leisure time as opposed to what we have now. Or right, that's exactly what I meant. So you have a drastically increased amount of leisure time. Maybe you only have to work 20 hours a week. Whereas before, you have to work 40 hours a week, just working off of Western standards, right? Before the agricultural revolution, you didn't stop working. You just worked.
Right. I mean, you look at hunter-gatherer societies, and it was you're collecting and or trying to store food constantly.
Right. Yeah. And there are always these problems that need to be addressed and things are broken or whatever. So the technological progress thing is, while there are elements to it that are tragic, it is not, even though I made the analogy of a hurricane earlier, it is not necessarily a hurricane because
there's benefits.
There's
unlike the hurricane.
Tremendous, gigantic benefits to it, right? And it's the issues that arise in technological revolutions are resolved in the same generation that they occur. So it's not like there's just an entire generation of people who are completely displaced and never find a place ever again, and they're just destitute and bereft. That's not what happens. One of the best comments I've heard on this is somebody was talking about this issue, saying, "Oh, the AI revolution is going to get rid of all these jobs, and everybody's going to be poor and not have it. There's going to be this. It's going to be like the movie Elysium, where there's just dregs and favelas everywhere, and then super rich people who have whatever." And the person that he was talking to, his response was, "Oh yeah, just like in the agricultural and industrial revolution when that exact thing happened." Oh no, not like that. Okay, it's gonna be totally different this time from how every other technological revolution has occurred in the past, which is that medical advancements occur and human life expectancy is increased because children die less and everybody gets more comfortable, and even the poor people now live at a higher level standard of living than royalty 200 years prior. Like it's just so it's creative destruction. It is what happens to you when you go to the gym. It's lamenting these things is I think more akin to lamenting. It's more like going to the gym and getting sore
and complaining that
and
you're
then be
sore.
like, why am I so sore all the time? And, but your muscles are getting bigger. You're getting healthier. Every part of your life is improving. Like,
So it's growing pains.
Right, it's growing pains. And those growing pains,
Yeah. But those are very hard to look past when you're looking at the destruction of the family.
Yeah.
And so that's why myself and others, I think, have gotten really tied up in that.
Yeah.
Or at least maybe not tied up in it. Some people are tied up in it. I hope I'm not tied up in it. But this episode's about me trying not to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Sure, yeah.
And also, we need to rebuild the family desperately.
Desperately, yes.
And it seems, from what I've read, it seems like the Industrial Revolution is a large part of what kicked off the separation of the family and making everybody an earner or a worker.
Yeah.
Like, instead of the husband just working and allowing everyone to stay home, or not even that, but having the husband taken out of the home to go work in a factory as opposed and having less time with his family.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's not, I don't want to cheapen that complaint, right?
Yeah.
That's a very significant issue that needs to be addressed if we're going to continue to survive. That has to be resolved. The thing I would say is that assigning that, I think that that's something that you could much more assign to sin than it is to the Industrial Revolution, because nobody made those people go to the factories.
Well, if it was a matter of survival, well, because what happened was, if they're willing to pay women, because those companies could get more hands working in their factories, it benefited them to pay more people less money and had more hands working. So therefore, it cheapened the labor of the husband, which then forced the wife and the children to all go out and work and therefore make collectively as much as the husband would have.
Yeah, but
because the company could get away with it.
The problem is that cheapens the agency of the people who agreed to that arrangement.
Sure, they allowed it to happen. They were seduced.
If they said no, we're not going to do this.
Right, as
and
a
they
society,
just couldn't get labor.
But they didn't.
Right, exactly. That's
Okay.
Yeah, they didn't. Yeah, they didn't. And so it's like tying the bow around the neck of, or laying this stuff at the feet of the Industrial Revolution, I think is the wrong way to do it. I think what you have to do is, it's the same thing with like the Jew thing, is like laying the like malfeasance of Jews, or laying the destruction of society at the feet of Jews because there are more Jews represented in pornography than any other group, is like that what the assertion you're making is that pornography wouldn't exist if Jews didn't.
It exists because people consume it.
Yeah, it exists because people are sinful and want
Quick. Yeah.
pornography. That's why it exists.
Yep.
And so that's one thing I would say is that does need to be addressed. And there's also another part of it, which is that you can't forget that there is a very intelligent consciousness in the form of Satan who is intentionally out there trying to destroy the family.
Right.
And there are books written by Jews and others about how we're going to destroy the family, and the family needs to be disassembled if the state is going to take control, and the state must take control because it's the only way to be progressive and Unitarian or whatever. Man has to be God, all of that stuff. So, and during the Industrial Revolution, all that stuff was at its peak. And so is it a fact of like just technological progress that people are having their lives destroyed, or is it a fact of sin and a fact of conscious, intentional desire by a group of evil people who want to disassemble the family for their own gain?
Right. And see the opportunity.
Right. See the opportunity. And now the question when you hit that is, when you talk about that topic, is, are they going to be successful? My answer is no. They're not.
Not ultimately.
Not ultimately.
But they were very successful, at least
in the short term. Yeah.
They've wrecked the family.
They've wrecked the family. But
there's us and others now who are reacting to that and realizing and intentionally trying to pull back to something that resembles a family wholeness and a family economy model within what we are given now.
Right. Yeah.
In this moment in history that we're living in.
Yeah.
'Cause we didn't get to pick which moment in history we're born in, but we're all characters in the story that God is writing. And we need to do what is right and we need to raise our families and be present with them as much as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
And to some, and so we're down the road enough with our technology that we can see ways of actually doing that.
Right. Well, yes, exactly.
With working from home. And you've talked about how homesteading is made far more possible through technological progress and the cheapening, not cheapening of, but the less expensive, to some degree. It's very easy to say cheapening because a lot of products are cheaply, crappy made stuff. And so,
right.
So it is very difficult sometimes to see, at least for me, this is my stumbling block, and it may be a lot of people's, is like, well, yeah, we have a lot of technology, but half of it doesn't work or it breaks too easily because it's made shoddily.
Right.
And we're advancing so quickly, we don't have time to perfect anything. That's kind of part of my beef with it, is like, we have some good stuff. That's what I was just talking with somebody today. I said, there's got to be a plateau sometime.
Yeah. It won't come soon, but it will come. We will hit I've talked about this before, where like we will eventually hit like technological barriers like you do in a video game, on the edges of the map, where it's
you can't go past this.
The Lord's just like, no, you cannot make yourself immortal.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm drawing a line there.
You're going to be a horror of science.
Right. Yeah. And so like that will happen. But yeah, there will be a plateau and things will catch up. And you are right. Because mass manufacturing was such a revolution, we tipped too far over to the side of being fascinated by it and making everything in mass.
Right.
And so everything does
consumerism was born, and the greed, just like pornography, the greed for more.
Right. And now people are realizing the consequences of that and how unhealthy it is. And there's all that being pulled back, and you have this entire market of people who want handcrafted things, and people are realizing that what gives something value is how much time and effort a human has put into it, not the fact that it exists. Mm-hmm. And so that the market, you're seeing the market resolve those problems naturally. But also one thing that is important, damn it, what was it? Something that was really important that I thought of. I don't know. I can't remember. So I guess it wasn't supposed to say it.
We'll come back to it.
Yeah, we'll come back to it. The other thing that I want to address is the specialization thing.
Yeah.
So the reason that specialization offers more stability than generalization is because of it's specifically because of the siloed, isolating nature of specialization. One part of the system can go down and the other parts can compensate for it. So if you're in a farming based society where everybody farms and stuff, if the rain doesn't come, you're done. You're toast. That's that.
Right. It's a bad year for everybody.
Right. Bad year for everybody. But we now have droughts that would kill thousands of people in this country all the time, and no one even knows about it because the system has gotten so specialized and so efficient, because that's what specialization is a representation of, is efficiency. The system has gotten so specialized and so efficient that we can have entire segments of the economy go down or crash without affecting any other part of it. And when parts that crashed, like in 2008, when the real estate market crashed and it caused ripples across the entire economy, those ripples are greatly reduced from what they would have been otherwise. So that's one element of it. Now the second, the caveat I do want to make
let's
here.
Let's go back to the make it real with the agricultural thing, the droughts.
Yes,
because we did have a couple of droughts.
Yeah,
and so price of hay, not this year, but the previous year or two, was jacked way up.
Yeah.
People would liquidate cattle herds. We have, I believe, a lower count of cattle in the U.S. than ever in history,
okay.
If I'm not incorrect.
Yeah.
And the price of the cattle is high, but not as high as it should be given the scarcity of cattle.
Yeah. So, I mean, the question would be, without that level of specialization, would it just be that prices are higher, or would it be that no one can get cattle and everyone's starving?
what do you mean by specialization then?
Like without...
Do you mean that across the country there are other parts that didn't get as much of a drought and they were able to produce enough food to cover it? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, basically. So the idea here, and I think if I recall correctly, the episode of Maximum Alert where I talked about this, I was talking about how people get really concerned about the fact that there's so few farmers today. Mm-hmm. And that isn't actually an indication that farming is dangerously... it's on a knife's edge. We're not going to have any more farmers. What that's actually a sign of is that farming has gotten so efficient that you need so few farmers to create food for everyone. And specialization is all it represents is that things have gotten so efficient. What that means is that in order to be a farmer, you have to know all this stuff about farming now because we know so much about farming. Mm-hmm. So you can't just pluck some guy off I can't be a farmer. Not right now. It's just not possible because there's too much. Now, when what farming was get a mule, plow, throw seeds, irrigate the land, hope for the best. When that's what farming was, then yeah, everybody can be a farmer. But now it's a highly specialized skill because it's that we know so much about farming, and all of that knowledge lends to an extremely efficient farming process. So that's what specialization represents, is extremely efficient systems, increasingly efficient systems. And efficient systems are stable systems because there's so much room to move around.
I think of more, maybe I would use the word redundancy.
Okay. Like instead of specialization?
See, complex to me, it makes me think of like a house of cards where it's very fragile. So it's so complex. Maybe I'll use air conditioning equipment because I'm familiar with that. The high efficiency systems have a lot of electrical components. The fans and blower motors can run at, instead of the old systems, which was like on and off.
Yeah.
Now they can ramp up and down depending on the load of the house and the temperatures and all that. And they have temperature sensors in multiple places. They have pressure sensors in multiple places. If something's not right, it will stop working or stop functioning to not kill itself.
Yeah.
The downside to that is that it's far more difficult to troubleshoot it because you have to check so many more things. And the systems are only so smart. Sometimes they'll tell you what's wrong, and other times, they don't do a very good job. And you're trying to trace down which component actually failed. Whereas the old systems, you like look in and you're like, oh, that component blew up. I'm going to replace that component and it works again.
Yeah.
There's like 3 things that went wrong, could go wrong with it, as opposed to, 7 sensors you have to check.
Yeah.
With like electrical equipment and see if they're functioning or not. That to me is a complex system, which works really, really well and is highly efficient in its electrical usage. And far more comfortable because it's not snapping on and off all the time, and so your electrical bill is lower. But the equipment is more expensive, and the components are more expensive, and the people you need to hire to fix it need to be paid higher because their level of specialization is so much higher. So it's a far more expensive than it used to be, and not everybody can do it.
Right.
And so there's a workplace deficit in skilled tradesmen who can troubleshoot that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so one thing here, I'll say this here, is that specialization, complexity, these things they're not monolithic. They're not utopian, right? You can obviously have like too high of
specialization.
Right. It's not, I'm not saying that this is some sort of, it fixes everything. We're specializing. It's amazing. It's right. It's just a fact of nature. It's just a part of the progress, and there are benefits and positives to it. And you can go out of balance to too specialized and too complex and have an issue where things are crashing and they can't even.
So I'm thinking and hoping, looking at this bigger picture instead of just me on a job where I'm in over my head trying to troubleshoot something that's highly specialized, and I'm like, blah.
Yeah.
I spent 3 hours on it and still don't accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. As happened yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what I'm taking away from it is I hope that, 10 or 20 years down the road, maybe what HVAC companies look like is they only work on one brand of equipment because the brands of equipment are so specialized.
Could be.
Which
Yeah.
is a really high level. I mean, that's a giant pain in the butt for. It's like you need to know what kind of brand your equipment is. You can't just call any AC company on the
Yeah.
books because they're like, sorry, we don't know how to deal with that kind of equipment.
Yeah. I mean, it already happens with cars. I had to take.
Yeah, you have to take it to a special.
I took the Volvo into a special mechanic because
Right,
I couldn't
because-
find anybody else working a Volvo nearby.
Right, because they're computed that you can't, without the right software, you can't even read the error codes on a Volvo at a normal mechanic shop.
Yeah, I don't know why it is, but there you go, specialization. I have no idea why that occurs. Like, why can't a mechanic just work on a Volvo? I don't know.
Yeah. So I guess it could just be growing pains and maybe going too far in one direction in a certain sector, which I am experiencing, and therefore I'm like, specialization is annoying.
Yeah, and we will, in 100 years, there will be two guys sitting around having a conversation about how we need to specialize. Because nobody knows how to deal with these really intricate pieces of technology that we have today or whatever. Like, it's going to swing back is what I'm saying.
Okay. Whereas now it's generalized labor but specialized equipment. And so we're running into stuff that's a pain in the behind.
Yeah, yeah. And
it's also fast moving in its adaptation. It's
right.
like they pump it out there and put it in the field. And it's like, we have to go to training sessions every time they release a new model.
Yeah. And one of the things that what I was going to say earlier that I forgot. So this is as I say this, because this is not going to sit well with some people. But remember that I said that I'm totally conceding that we are too far in the side of mass consumer culture and things are made cheaply. Things are made too cheaply right now. The last three cars I bought are all pre 2015. So I'm with you. But
deliberately so.
Yeah,
to avoid the new stuff.
Right, to avoid the new stuff, exactly. And I very begrudgingly jumped that up from, it was 2010 was my cutoff. Now 2015 is my cutoff with the Volvo because it's 2012. But one of the things that you have to concede, I'm sorry, it's just logical, is that although things are made more cheaply today, them being made more cheaply does also mean that they are cheaper, which means that yes, you might have a cheap version of the thing that you have, but the other alternative is to not have it. And do you know how I know you would prefer to have a cheap version over not having it?
Let me guess,
because you have it. So there you go, brother. Like, that's part of the situation that we're in here. And again, and this is what this is kind of what we're talking about, where there's this new wave of families coming in and saying, yeah, we don't want to participate in this, whatever. If the system really was actually inefficient, people would not participate in it. They would participate in the system that was truly efficient and would outcompete the other system. So the fact that this is the course that we went is an indication that it was the only course to go. You can't pour water down a hill and then argue with the water about which way it flowed to get to the bottom of the hill. It's just nature. It's just how it works. It's also really important. One of the points that you made about it being very difficult for you to compete with large companies that can sell chicken for extra cheap, but you have to sell it for whatever because it's farm raised. One of the things that I'll say is that that's not that stuff like that, generally speaking, is not a function of markets and technological progress, but is a function of government getting involved with these things and subsidizing them.
And that's the big beef I have with the way the agriculture, agribusiness, as the term was coined.
Right.
Agribusiness is not agriculture.
Yeah.
It's like the industrialization to a ridiculous degree.
Right.
Or a degree that overshot its actual... so they produced a lot of stuff.
Right.
But now we know that the stuff they produced was very hollow.
Yeah.
It's not real food in that it's very nutritionally sparse.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here's the thing is that in order to counter that issue, that specific issue where a agribusiness company can come in and undercut real farmers, the thing you actually need is not less complexity and less specialization. You need more, because that's competition. These companies need competition, and they are appealing to the guys with all the guns, the government, to suppress their competition via regulation and taxes.
Right. Saying you have to do this, you have to fulfill it this way. You can't slaughter your own animals. It has to be at a United States
certified
facility,
and they have to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get that stamp.
To get that stamp, yeah. To get those guys to come in and go, yep, check mark.
Yep,
you can sell meat you slaughter here.
Yep, exactly. And so it's protected. That system is protected. It's not naturally occurring. It is synthetically created.
Yeah, and
its synthesis will be the fact that it's synthetic, the fact that it's protected. Those things will ultimately be its undoing, because eventually it will gum itself up, and people like you will figure out how to operate low enough to the ground and quickly enough that you'll be able to move around them, and then it'll fall apart anyways.
It's also education to the consumer, educating the consumer on what they're buying at the grocery store versus what I'm making at home on my little homestead.
Yeah.
Like Joel Salatin does this. That's how he separated himself. How he grows pastured poultry. He doesn't use a tractor, a machine anywhere. It's small rudimentary pens, and they are man moved. He uses simple but perfectly designed engineering in order to move the pens efficiently. He's very efficient.
Yeah.
And he's a very numbers guy. He's an accountant, actually. And he educated people. He found out, tells people, look, this is what they do to your chicken. Foster Farms does this.
Yeah.
It's pumped up with antibiotics. It gets washed in chlorine to kill off bacteria. It gets, it sits in water tanks and absorbs like potentially pooey water into the meat, because the flesh of the chickens is so poor from being indoors and never seeing the sunlight that it absorbs a lot of fluid, and so you're buying fluid filled chicken and it boils that water off, so you're buying per weight, but you're getting what you're actually getting as far as nutrition, and the chicken nutritional density when it doesn't get to eat grass and it's not out in the sunlight is not as good.
Right.
And whatever you're feeding it is also getting into its bones and getting into its fat and is making you sick.
Right.
And he said, my chicken's not like that.
Yeah.
Here's what they get fed. They get to be outdoors for most of their lives. Yeah. They get to eat grass. They get to chase bugs. They're stronger, and the meat's better for you.
Yeah.
So it's an educational thing. That's a lot of the workaround. And as America wakes up to what it's like and starts voting with its dollars here and there, we're starting to see change.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think the way we could tie a bow on this is to actually, the point that I am ultimately trying to make is that this idea of simple systems versus complex systems, I think, is a false dichotomy. Simple systems will always become complex systems. They're the same thing. They're the same thing. If in a simple system you have any guy who, let's take it all the way back to pre-agricultural revolution. If you have a guy trying to figure out how to more efficiently operate his shovel, that is a microcosm of the evolutionary pressures that occur within systems to make them more efficient. So if you are sitting there and you're going, and you're a regular peasant or whatever, this is going to be a bad kind of example of how it all operated, like in reality, but just bear with me. So if you're a simple peasant and you have 7 apple trees and you can get $1 per apple for your apple trees, you are incentivized to create as many apples as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. You're incentivized by the nature of reality to do that.
Sure.
So you will start to try to produce techniques and methods and technologies that allow the creation of more apples. The moment you do that, the price of apples is going to decrease because now there's more apples in the system. So
they're not scarce.
Yeah, your neighbor who has another 7 apple trees, who's getting $1 per apple from his apple trees, is going to have to create more apples in order to match your number of apples, because now apples cost 95 cents and he has bills to pay.
Mm-hmm.
So he has to figure out new ways. Then you factor in the fact that you are trying not to be chasing people, not chasing technological progress, because if you are, you're always going to be selling your apples for 5 cents less. In order to try to get them for what is the equivalent of $1, you have to match technological progress with the people you're competing with your neighbor who has 7 apple trees. So you can't just sit there and wait for him to discover something new and look over the fence and take his idea and then implement it yourself. You have to go in there and try to lead him in the invention.
Right.
So you get this compounding effect of all these people trying to compete with each other, this competition, and that drives progress until you hit the agricultural revolution that spurs on the industrial revolution, that spurred on the digital revolution, that will spur on the AI revolution, that will spur on some sort of space traveling revolution. And then I assume at that point it'll probably slow down, but who knows?
Well, then you'll have different planets that they're terraforming.
Right.
And you'll have different challenges on different planets,
yeah,
presumably,
yeah,
if Jesus doesn't get back in
yeah,
time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So who knows how that plays out in the end, but it's not possible to only have a simple society. They will eventually compete themselves into complexity.
I should say that I don't agree with when I'm saying simple societies. I would say that the current American agricultural model of monocropping that's simple.
Okay.
And it's bad because there's no redundancy in it. It's not feeding the land. So you're sucking all the nutrients out of the land just to grow a humongous crop of corn over and over and over again until the soil is depleted.
Yeah. And
you're not taking care of the soil.
Yeah.
And so you're just robbing the land of its nutrients to produce something that we don't need that much corn.
Yeah. Right.
And that's a function of, like you were saying, the government.
That's a subsidy thing. Yeah.
That's a subsidy thing. They're paying. Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we can, and then putting all this corn syrup in our food.
Right.
That's
exactly.
Really good for us, as it turns out.
Yeah. It's great for you. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we're all so thin.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our heart disease is low.
Yeah. Exactly.
And diabetes is on the fall.
Yeah.
So diversity or complexity or redundancy on a farm is incredibly important.
Right.
It needs to be layered. And homesteaders are big into diversity. It's a microcosm of, you got chickens and you've got some sort of grazing animal and you have fruit trees, you have a vegetable garden, you have flowers, you have bees, you have a ton of different stuff.
Right.
And so the idea, it's not having all your eggs in one basket. So as far as that, I agree completely with the complexity thing from the start. Right. So I'm going back and saying, I guess I don't disagree even from the beginning of this conversation about that kind of complexity.
Yeah.
Because that's how historically, that's how societies would weather things is, some blight hit all the apple trees.
Time to grow peaches.
Well, we have peaches already.
Oh, yeah.
The point is, you didn't have all apple trees.
Right.
You shouldn't have.
Right.
So the fact that we have acres and acres and acres of just apple trees, and one disease comes in and kills the entire thing, you're toast.
Right.
Now you have to cut down all the apple trees, and if it takes 7 years for a new fruit tree to start producing any fruit, you're that far down the road once you plant. Right. Not to mention the land clearing.
Right.
So you have set yourself up for failure with that simplicity.
Yeah.
So that's not what I was referring to. Okay. That kind of, so in that sense, I'm very much on board with I guess I would have said diversity, but I guess it's the hyper specialization more that I have had issue with.
Yeah.
As far as seeing that break down when as you put it, it overreaches in a certain sector.
Right.
And so that's when the specialization breaks down.
Yeah.
However, the specialization works incredibly in our favor. That's the only way that we have heart surgeons.
Right.
Is because of specialization.
Yeah.
There's a family at our church who had a problem with their baby in utero.
Yes.
And it was because they went to a city where one doctor who does these like surgeries, and they met somebody there who was from like Thailand or something.
Yeah.
Who flew in for this doctor. Like that level of specialization. He's known worldwide as the guy to do this kind of surgery.
You're right.
And save the baby's life.
Yeah.
So, without that level of complexity or diversity, we don't have that.
Right.
So, my concept, I suppose, of complexity has maybe been too narrow-minded in one sector or another where I see failings.
Yeah.
And maybe it's just butting up against a wall where like, oh, we overreached there. And, the sector wasn't prepared to deal with the technology that was being put out.
Yeah.
It was put out there too quickly without preparing the sector for it, And so it's growing pains of being like, how do we even fix this
it's just
now?
humans
we don't have anyone who
catching
knows
up
how to
with
fix
progress.
this.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It takes time to train these people, and we're putting out technology that nobody knows how to work on.
Yeah.
And so it breaks, and we're like, ah.
Yeah. And one thing that's also important to note is that, because I have the specialization issue I've encountered a lot. A lot of the time when I hear examples of time specialization is failing, a lot of those times are actually examples of managerial skill failing. So like the example of a house that you used earlier.
Yeah, I didn't use that in the podcast. No, that was
okay.
before. So really quickly.
Yes.
The house specialization. If you're building a house, you have guys to do the dirt work.
Yep.
To prepare the land, because you don't want to just build your concrete or your piers on the soft ground. You have to scrape away the topsoil. You've got to put like a certain kind of clay down that's not going to sink and settle and break your foundation or crack your house in half when years on down the road. So you got somebody specialized who does dirt work and knows what they're doing, has all the heavy equipment for moving that earth, right? And then you've got somebody like a concrete team who comes in and they bring in highly specialized trucks that only deal in concrete, and a crew that knows how to mix the concrete, or not mix it, but spread it out and smooth it out and level it and do all that thing. And I've watched them work. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
It's really cool to watch.
Yeah, very cool.
'Cause I can't do that. That's a level of skill.
Yeah.
And then after that, you've got, framers, carpenters. You even have like trim carpenters at the very end who are doing like the nice, the crown molding and stuff like that. That's different than the rough-in carpenters who are just building the frame of the house. You've got electricians, you've got plumbers, you've got the HVAC guys, you've got spray foam companies, you got roofers. So you got like maybe 8-9 trades tied up in one house. And the problem with specialization there is it's a dichotomy again. So you want all those guys to do their job really well because they know their niche of building that house really well. Oh yeah, and also drywallers, painters, that sort of thing, cabinet makers, all that, flooring guys.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous how many trades are involved in the making of a house, which
Yeah.
used to be like Pa Ingalls.
yeah,
He used to build the whole thing himself out of logs.
Right.
Granted, it wasn't a house that any of us would want to live in now.
Right.
But the trouble is that those trades don't always know how to work with each other, and since they don't know the other trade very well, they can get in each other's way and step on toes.
Yeah.
As an HVAC guy, if the electricians get there first, they run wire all over the floor of the attic space to where you can't put boards down to walk on very easily. You're stepping on wires everywhere, and if plumbing's in the way, then you can't run ductwork very easily through the studs and everything. So that makes it difficult if it's not well orchestrated, right? So that's where specialization breaks down, is that nobody knows what anybody else's job is.
Yes.
And they don't work together
Yes.
well. So that's something that needs to, and that's supposed to be the job of the general contractor. They're supposed to be able to have enough knowledge of all the trades to be able to orchestrate that. However, because of all those because of all the materials that we have now and all the specialization, it's impossible for a general contractor to be well versed enough in all of those to do a really fantastic job.
Yeah. Well, so here's what I'll say. I'll say two things, and then we can wrap it up because I know we're a little long. One, that's what I mean. You say the orchestration is wrong. So I was just talking last night with my dad about contractors to do the renovation of our cabin. And he was telling me about the contractor that built their house, gave me his number. This guy is an orchestrator. Yep. He's a manager. Everything is down to the letter. He builds houses in like 3 or 4 months. Like he built my parents' house that you've been to in like 3 months. And it's because he is dang it. Everybody has the plans. Everybody does this.
Right.
Everybody
makes sure everyone's on the same page.
You're on this. You're here at this time.
Let me tell you, trying to deal with tradesmen who
Yeah.
are not businessmen
Yeah.
is a task.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. And so his stance is you're here, you don't get the business. There's no whatever. You're like, and so he's an orchestrator. And so that specialization is a weapon to him.
Yeah.
To him, it's the reason why he's one of the biggest contractors in the area.
Sure, deservedly so if you can do that well.
Yeah. And so the second thing I'll say is that's what my job is.
Okay.
My job is, I've said this before,
You're an
maybe on the
orchestrator.
podcast, is that a really good salesperson, what they actually are is a play director. A lot of salespeople, they think they're the lead actor.
Yeah.
That's what they think they are. They're a play director. And it's their job.
You be here.
Yeah.
You
It's
get
their
on your
job
cue.
to take the customer.
That poor ladybug.
That poor ladybug. It's their job to take the customer and put the customer in the audience, figure out what the customer likes, and then put on a play for them that they like. And at the end of the show, if they like it, they buy. And if they don't like it, they don't. They get up and walk out.
I didn't know you could do that with plays.
Yeah, I wish you could.
I'd have a lot more money.
Yeah, I go to so many plays.
Yes.
So the and it's my job to know enough about everyone else's job in my company that as soon as I hear the right word, I go, I know who you need to talk to.
Yeah.
And I turn around and I go, talk
Jeremy,
to this guy.
yeah.
Yeah. Hey, John, I need you. And I have a counterpart. I'm in such a specialized role that I don't even actually know how our technology works. I have a counterpart who's a sales engineer who knows all that stuff, but he has no idea how to sell anything to anybody. He has no idea how any of that works. He doesn't know he doesn't know what an upfront contract is or a negative reverse or how to have a good, he's just the least autistic software engineer they could find.
Right.
So he's just the one that is not totally incapable of speaking to people.
Right.
So he's the one that they put me with. And then go ahead.
Devil's advocate, though, you die and nobody's able to fulfill your function without. So this is where redundancy comes in.
Yeah.
I suppose, right? You would have to have other people at your company who are capable of picking up your.
Well, yeah, they're just other salespeople. If I was in a
So you would call that further complexity, that there is redundancy to take your place if you go down, because if it's such a spider web that if you pluck the wrong spider web, a lot of the web collapses because so much was depending on that one person's role. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, but that's not. First of all, there is a guy at my company that's like that. If something happened to him, the whole company would come to a grinding halt, and that guy gets paid $5 million a year.
Right.
And the company literally has a life insurance policy on him, so that if something happens to him,
they at least can have money to weather the
weather.
storm.
Yeah, exactly. So,
okay, but that's. Yeah. Okay. So that's complexity.
Right.
Is what you're saying.
Right. And insurance is a complex thing. And, but also.
So I would say complexity makes you. The hyper specialization makes you vulnerable in the sense that if something happens to a key guy, a lot of stuff goes down.
Yeah.
But how you cope with that is having insurance or having backups or having redundancy in some way.
Yeah.
that guy has at least a couple other people who know where his passwords are, so they can at least get into the accounts, that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, maybe you've got 6 people that
But
together
I'm
can
explaining
make
what
that one guy.
what I see as far as like, oh, it's hyper specialized. Only this guy knows how to do his job, and he dies. Like, now what do we do?
Right.
We can't replace him because he spent 20 years developing this one skill,
this one
and there's
thing.
nobody else.
Yeah.
That one doctor in Houston or whatever dies in a car accident, and you're like, now nobody in the world can perform these surgeries as well as he could.
Yeah.
So there's a big gap.
Here's one thing I think that's really important to note is that I'm not asserting, and I don't think anybody that defends specialization is asserting, that specialization is utopian.
Sure.
There is more risk in collapse. There is more trouble in general for societies that don't orient themselves this way versus societies that do. And the assertion that you can make that proves that is that all the societies that didn't orient themselves this way are now museum exhibits for all the societies that do.
Okay, fair enough.
And
well, and like you were saying, this plays back to it's written into nature's code.
yeah.
We are going to become more complex.
Yeah,
And there's going to be but it's also a fallen world, and so we'll experience deaths.
yeah, it doesn't
And
complexity
parts of the
and
system
special-
will collapse.
Yeah.
But you're saying, and I guess I just really like the word redundancy, because then that means there's
It's a good word.
like you were saying, something will pick up the slack somewhere.
Something
Even
will pick
if
up the
one
slack.
company goes down, there's other companies that will pick up those
Step
tabs.
in and yeah, and
Okay.
and,
But there will be a period of, obviously, of just like after a drought, it's like we got to spend the next year picking up the pieces
right,
and rebuilding after the hurricane came through.
right.
We still got to rebuild.
You can think of it like this: like specialization. I mean, we'll use that
Big
word.
air quotes there. That
Yeah, big air
Ethan's making.
specialization. Yeah, I'm putting big air quotes. Specialization. You can overlay that word right to redundancy or diversity, and think about people's economic portfolios. They diversify. They specialize where that money is being deployed. They don't just put it all into one place, right? And that helps reduce the pressure that they feel, the consequences of one aspect of their portfolio crashing. Well, their portfolio is diversified. It's in other things. And so
Right.
it's redundant. Right, exactly. There are redundancies built into the system. So it may be,
That's the whole reason for mutual funds,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And maybe,
as opposed to having fun with 2 stocks that you're playing with.
right. Yeah. Yeah. maybe you buy a bunch of Fangum stocks, Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, and Google, and Netflix, which is not, I'm hesitant to bring that up, but anyways, maybe you buy into the big 7, but you also buy into telephone companies at a small amount, so that when if something ever happens to all the information infrastructure and Google and Microsoft collapse, well, the only way people can talk to each other is old phone lines. And now you own part of the companies that are the only people capable of doing that. Right. So you make a bunch of money on that when their stock price goes up.
That's why you have bonds to balance stocks.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so it's that complexity, again, air quotes, or that specialization, air quotes, that ensures you against total destruction. And I think if that's what we're talking about, these highly complex societies have not, and they've only been around for a little while. I'll give everybody that when I say this.
Yeah.
None of them have been totally destroyed yet. None of them have been. Germany's still there. Now it may, be a very cucked nut, like it may have its nuts clipped, but it still exists. Its people are still there, and here's another thing that we can pull from finance. The secret to investing is survival. That is the secret. Germany is still there, which means Germany can still usher in the Fourth Reich. Like Germany's history is not closed. If Germany and its people were completely eradicated, then that's it. It's over for them. Survival is more important. Survival is the thing. Survival is the key. That's a key thing in investing. Keeping your portfolio from zero is way more important than keeping your portfolio at $1 million.
Yeah.
Because you can always get that $1 million back as long as you don't go to zero. So And complex societies are way better at stopping that zero marker from being hit. And simple societies they're just fragile. They honestly, I mean, how many simple societies actually existed in perpetuity, or not in perpetuity, but just like over more than a couple hundred years? Like, how many of them actually, I mean, I'm not a historian, maybe that's a bad point, but maybe I'll get beat up on that, beat up at that at church or whatever by somebody who knows more about that than me. But, the point,
I've seen that happen a lot at our church.
Yeah, it does happen. Yeah,
I say stupid things.
Yeah, I say something stupid on the podcast, and then 7 people come to me.
Yeah, I see Ethan get slapped routinely at church, right in the foyer. Yeah. Hey, brother.
Yeah. Here's the point. Here's the point, so we can wrap this up. Complex societies do not eliminate human suffering. They don't. They just plainly don't. They reduce it, versus what simple societies are capable of doing. They just reduce it. They reduce the sum total amount of disastrous events, and they reduce the shock wave of those disastrous events across societies. And I think that's the, if you wanted to draw a juxtaposition, I still think it's a false dichotomy to draw that, because I think simple societies are just complex societies in waiting.
In development.
Yeah, in early development.
Third world countries that aren't there yet. Or
they're just not there yet, or whatever.
Hamstrung by civil war or whatever else.
Yeah.
Government, probably.
Yeah, and so that, I just think that's the kind of the key of the argument. And I think that people get caught up because both sides start to accuse the other side of being like, you're just saying that being returning to tradition and being a farmer is going to make you happy and like alleviate all the world's problems. And the other person's like, no, that's not what I'm saying. And then they're going, oh, what you think because medical technology well, what about all the sickness it causes? What about all this? I'm like, okay, well, I'm not saying that it's
no, I don't want
utopian. Yeah. I'm not saying, nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying that things are utopian. And
I wish emergency rooms didn't exist.
Yeah. Nobody's Nobody's saying that these things are utopian. Nobody's saying that either solution is this wondrous state of human existence that's, totally blissful. And I think that going a step further and saying that the argument itself is kind of pointless, because it's just natural for one to become the other, I think is the real answer to that question.
Okay. Is
that one will evolve into the other, and then at some point in the complexity cycle and the cycles of the turning wheels of history, you will get generations that are like ours, where it's like you have me, who's a highly specialized tech worker living on a homestead with chickens and stuff. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. It's not like I don't understand the value of these things.
Right.
And it's not like I don't think that there are huge swaths of the Wendell Berry argument that are correct.
Right. Yeah.
It's not that I don't think that. It's just that I think that the sum total of that argument goes the wrong direction.
Sure. He's a very good social barometer.
Yeah.
He's and at least of the book we read, The Unsettling of America, largely is dealing with the government problem.
Right. The government
problem. It's like
problem
what government did to agribusiness is his biggest beef that I took away from that book, is not necessarily the technology of it.
Right. Well, it's the government retarding technological advancement.
True.
That's what it's doing.
Forcing it into a certain direction.
Right.
That's not beneficial in the long term.
Right.
That just produces a lot of stuff.
Right.
At a cheaper price, only because it's being subsidized with lots of printed fiat money.
And it's not a sustainable thing. And the thing about things that aren't sustainable is that they aren't sustainable.
Oh, is that what the definition is?
Yeah.
I had wondered.
We're going to watch them. We're going to watch these unsustainable systems. That's why this is the most exciting time to have ever lived, dude. You are going to witness, either you're going to witness or your children are going to witness humanity's ascension from a vast majority of the consequences of the industrial and digital revolution. We are going to leave a huge part of those issues behind and keep a ton of the benefits. So, yeah, that's my piece.
Cool.
That's my
Looking
piece.
forward to it.
Yeah.
Thanks. Good discussion. I appreciate
Yes.
the clarity.
Yes.
That helps a lot.
Yes.
Hopefully it helps some others out there who have been struggling as I have with figuring out exactly what we want.
Yeah. I
What
hope
it
so
is
too.
right to want, what we should throw away, and not tossing the baby out with the bathwater,
Yeah.
which
yeah.
is important because there's a lot of bathwater that has to be thrown out.
There is a lot of
But there is a
bathwater.
lot of babies in that bathwater that you
Right.
need to save.
Yeah,
Or,
exactly.
well, have no choice but to save. You got to go back outside and like, oh, there's a baby in there.
Yeah,
Where's
dang
the
it.
baby?
It's cold. Hurry.
Oh, crap. Yeah, get it. Quick.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, and we'll sign off, is if you're a regenerate Christian, do as Jason has done, do as I have done, follow your desires because God has put them there. And that will be you fulfilling your place in the market and helping to find an equilibrium for humanity. Jason is doing what he should be doing because he's done it prayerfully and diligently. And I'm doing what I should be doing because I've done it prayerfully and diligently. And we have created through doing that. Well,
Oddly enough, I'm ending up in a very maybe special. I don't know about highly
you'll be in
special. It will be specialized in give it 2 or 3 years, and I'll be
Yeah.
in a far more specialized role than this,
Right.
as opposed to general editor and
Yeah.
and social media
general
poster.
operations manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
But I'm still gonna raise chickens
Yeah, hell yeah.
and chop firewood by hand.
Yes.
I might get a machine when I can afford it.
Well, then you'll chop firewood by hand when it's fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is very satisfying.
It is extremely
for about
satisfying.
20 minutes.
All right, guys, we love you. We hope this conversation was beneficial.
Yeah.
Find a young woman, or if you're old, I guess find an old woman.
Find someone within your generation, please.
Yeah. That's a good guideline.
We'll just do that.
Have babies. Go to church. Love you
And
guys.
build society. If you have questions, comments, and anything you'd like us to talk about, email us at workhard@hyperpremium.co.
Yes, sir.
No.
No. All right, guys. See you next week. Bye-bye.